Does Tesla have the right developer culture? Developers are the key to the future of every company. Software is eating the world, and developers are the workhorse of a software-driven world. So is Tesla doing the right things? Is it organized the right way? Is it attracting the right developers? I want to answer this question through the lens of Jeff Lawson's new book, Ask Your Developer, and try to, from my, of course, limited knowledge from the outside, try to find conclusions, clues of how Tesla is dealing with this challenge of organizing the corporation of the 21st century around software. By the way, this applies also to our CRISPR companies in our portfolio. This is a Not Even Wrong podcast. It's January 17th, 2021. This is Krim Delco. Since the last update, the fund is down 3%. The market is down about 1.2%. For the year, we're up 24.5%. The market's up 30 basis points. We're outperforming by 24%. Jeff Lawson is the founder of Twilio. Twilio is a platform company that allows people to write software on top of Twilio's platform, in particular for communication products. So, for example, Uber used to be a large customer of Twilio, where you have voice calls, texts, things like that embedded in the software with the platform. So it allows all these communication tools that are on the mobile platform. So let's say your iPhone and your communication that you have with companies like your bank, your Uber. Uber has internalized this for a couple of years ago, so they're not using Twilio anymore. But it's a good example of how Twilio grew and what they are. So the point here is not to talk about Twilio. I think the book, I haven't actually read the book, it just came out, but I think it's a very interesting thing to talk about because, first of all, Twilio is a wealth generator, a clear disruptor, a fundamentally new concept with new engineering practices being applied in the real world, a wealth creator. Jeff Lawson's company, he's founded Twilio, is now about 60 billion market cap. So this is a real company to be taken seriously along the lines of Square, and therefore very important for us to analyze. So I'm going to read the book and talk about it more. But for now, it just inspired me to think about this more deeply. So what is he talking about? He's talking about the supply chain of software. 30, 40 years ago, you had to write everything from scratch. Every kind of application had to be written from the source code all the way up. Today, you have a supply chain or the API economy, the application programming interface. So for example, if you want to have a product that gives you recommendations for, let's say you're in a particular place and you do a search for a coffee shop, and then the product gives you a recommendation for if you search for this coffee shop, you might also be interested in this type of restaurant. So this is something today you can use an API for, let's say with AWS, where you can just write your front end, so the actual search for the coffee shop, which is maybe your product. Let's say you are a coffee shop that has that kind of ability on your website to do a search for the next location, and then you have an API which plugs into the AWS infrastructure, which has all the data, metadata, of course, about where other people who did that same search went for dinner, for example. So you don't need to rewrite everything. And more importantly, these days, you don't have to have access to all the data. You can just plug into the AWS infrastructure and then offer a really productive, interesting service to your customers that prior to this whole infrastructure build out, you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do, or you would have had to spend millions of dollars. So this is kind of, in a nutshell, what the API economy really is. And Jeff Lawson says some things that probably, particularly in Silicon Valley, might seem very obvious, which is, yeah, of course, duh, we have this, but it's not so obvious. And I think I want to shine a light on Tesla here because it's our largest position, because I believe that fundamentally, next to maybe a couple of other aspects of the Tesla innovation stack, the developer and the software side of things are going to be key for the competitive advantage going forward, in particular with the coming fight with companies like NIO and other Chinese disruptors, which we have identified as the most risky part of the, at least of the competitive side of the Tesla business. So does Tesla have the right developer structure, I think to answer this question, I want to use Jeff Lawson's ideas. And he brings out a few things. First of all, he as a company has been selling a service to developers. So he's obviously talking his own book when he says that every company has to market to developers because that's what he does. And you could argue, well, maybe Tesla is not in the same business. They're not selling a platform to other developers. They are selling cars to users. They are selling solar systems to users. However, at some point, if every company is a software company, you have to say that every product and every solution that Tesla is selling to the marketplace in the end is a software product, and therefore the developer who develops that software is going to be key in enabling that product. So in that sense, Tesla is a developer-driven company. And the question is, are they? Should they be? How are they? Now, I think it is, even as a user of the Tesla car, obvious that the front end, the UX, is becoming more and more important. So the interaction between me and the car is becoming less of pushing the gas pedal, turning the steering wheel. It is a lot more the MCU, which is that big iPad-looking screen that faces you when you drive the car. This is the interaction, and it is all software. So in that sense, we're already in that world where ease to use, functionality, of course, the things shouldn't break down, like we had recently news that some of the older Model S's had too many breakdowns because of lack of memory. So the problem that Tesla is solving, although very technical, we're talking again about battery technology, drivetrain, battery management software. So those are still the main problems, manufacturing. But the problem that is actually solving, which is when it's facing the customer and when the product is going to compete in the marketplace for the wallet of the customer, it is highly conceivable that we will see more and more software-driven solutions as being the deciding factor. And when I say that, I don't just mean the nice buttons to click when you do a presentation in the showroom. I mean that the thing actually has to work. And in order to work, and in order to work at scale, and in order to work in a way that you can debug efficiently, you need the developers to be on board. So Jeff Lawson talks about the size of the team. He was a former Amazon employee, and he talks about Amazon having a similar structure with 5,000 employees, 50,000 employees, 100,000 employees. The point is that small teams defined as organized around the problem, around the customer, and around clear metrics. That is the definition of a small team. A small team is key to solving software problems in the future. So every company has to be organized around small teams, which again are defined as around the problem, a customer, and metrics. So you cannot be solving X by being measured with Y. This is very dangerous. And in my view, one of the main problems why companies like Volkswagen are not able to transition into a software-driven company. This is exactly the problem. And I don't know if Tesla is doing the right thing, but so far I would say, I hope, and this is one of the questions that I have going forward for Tesla in my communication with the company, it's going to be, are you organized around problems, customers, and metrics, or are you being more centralized? How is that bureaucracy, the software development supply chain, actually working through your company? This will be one of the big questions that I have for Tesla. I think in order to capture the software development potential, or what I call the compound of knowledge and the compound of engineering abilities and practices in the future of, let's say, Tesla or any kind of company, I think it is absolutely key. It is absolutely crucial to have an ability to define problems and what Jeff Lawson calls meiosis. So if a problem becomes too big, you start splitting. The teams cannot become too big. This is the key. He's also talking about a very interesting personality kind of thing that I think is something that also is very, as I said, interesting. And that is that some developers like infrastructure type problems, some developers like fast, iterative, customer facing, you have the answer, you have the solution type problems. Other developers like more maybe kind of problems that are maybe more technical, academic. Other developers like the opposite. So there is also the personality thing. And when we talk about, let's say, a software culture, within Tesla, the question arises, well, what kind of culture? Is this an infrastructure culture? Is this a front-end culture? And the answer is it's all of the above. And I think this is one of the key parameters that I think Tesla has to solve, which is build an innovation stack around software, which is driven in such a way that the right culture is being attracted to the right problems. You don't want to have academic geniuses being attached to, let's say, your interface problem with the seatbelt in the Tesla MCU. I mean, that's not, these people want to think maybe more about how to integrate data at a large scale, something along the lines of Andrej Karpathy, who just recently tweeted that the future of AI is really a scalable solution to the question, how can we at scale do large experiments with large data and learn from experience, because that's really what AI is. So this is an infrastructure type problem that has to be solved by infrastructure type people, and Karpathy, of course, is a little bit of both. He's an infrastructure person that is solving a front-end problem, which is self-driving. And if you look at his talks, let's say recently, have been at infrastructure conference, such as, for example, multitasking in AI, or using PyTorch for large-scale problems, things like that, and not necessarily how do I make a nice UI. So to summarize, does Tesla have the right software culture? I can't answer that question, but here is the question, and I think this is the first of a series of episodes that we're going to have around the future of the future of any company is going to be software, and software as a company definition or as a company outline means a company is attracting the right talent for the right problems and has a process in place that sizes teams appropriate to the challenge and keeps them small, in a sense defined by Jeff Lawson as the team is organized around a problem, a customer, and metrics. That is the size. So a team can be large in terms of numbers as long as the problem is large enough. So it makes sense to have, let's say, 50 engineers working on that problem. There's no hard number. Oh, 3 people is, or pizza, or that kind of stuff like Amazon. I don't think that that is necessarily the right way to think about it as companies scale, as problems scale. I just want to bring in one little example from last week, just to bring this argument home. And that is, Tesla just introduced their own inverter. And an inverter is a piece of technology that inverts or transmits electrons from solar panels into usable AC type electricity that we can use for our air conditioning, or in the case of the car, it's a DC type situation. But again, you have electrons which get generated through the photoelectric effect. That's what we call solar panels. And then those solar panels, that electricity has to be transformed into some usable electricity, and that is what an inverter does. They've just introduced their own inverter, and people are saying, well, why are they doing this? Maybe they have a cost advantage. Yes, all of the above. But here's the thing. The inverter is also going to be the key, the software heart of the solar system. This is, in my view, this is what they're going after. This is what Enphase has done. That's why the company has been so successful. We were early investors in Enphase because of exactly that feature of Enphase. So they've done the right thing, and I don't want to necessarily call now them out as being either a short or threatened by Tesla. But here's what Tesla is going to do. They're going to create a software-driven system that we call solar power. And the heart is going to be the inverter, and that's why they introduced the inverter. Of course, they probably have also cost advantages. Maybe they have some breakthroughs in inverter technology. All these things might be the case, but fundamentally, the reason they want to have an inverter in their supply chain is because they want to have a heart or a point where the developer interacts with the customer, and that's going to be the inverter. So I think that is a very important point that nobody on the street is now talking about. But I think for us, this is a very good news, and another reason to be very happy being a large shareholder of Tesla. So again, to summarize, software eats the world. Developers are becoming the front end of the company. The developers are becoming the workhorses of the solutions that companies deliver to customers, which is really what their business is. sizing the teams that are working on software is key to any success of a company. And it's the same for Tesla as, let's say, also Twist Bioscience or any other company that we own. We will have to look much deeper into how our companies harnessing the power of developers, or vice versa, how are they dealing with the problem that you're going from maybe an engineering or management driven culture to a more developer driven culture. And I think Jeff Lawson's book is a good entry point into thinking about that. So after I read the book, or while I'm reading the book, I will also discuss more about this book. But it just came out. I just heard an introductory interview by Jeff, and I just wanted to bring this episode out to lay out the thought, because I think it's a very important, crucial thought for the future of our portfolio. Thank you.